So that's what we said. That's what we said. We'd only include prospectively registered trials, and we'd check that the data are real and accurate. And again, Professor Furukawa's work. Lots of trials are not real. Lots of trials you cannot. The recommendations from this study, reviews should verify the study design by contacting the authors and checking their protocols and source data. Yes, I completely agree with that. Exercise caution in using systematic reviews that uncritically incorporate trials identified in Chinese databases. Yeah, I think uncritical inclusion of trials, in this case in Chinese databases, but to be fair, this is the world-leading fabricator of trials. I'm sorry to say he's Japanese. Yoshitaka Fuji. Bolt fabricated 90 trials. Yoshitaka Fuji fabricated 183. He's the record holder in the world. And the interesting thing, Tokyo Medical and Dental University, University of Tsukuba, Toho University, he was publishing 8 randomized trials a year. 8 randomized trials a year. I publish one every 8 years. But he was really publishing. I don't know how anybody could do that, right? And presumably in his university, how did the university think he could publish 8 randomized trials a year? I don't know. Didn't anybody think to check in the university? Professor Fuji, wow, another trial. A month later, whoa, another one, here we go. He's really publishing these trials very, very quickly. Didn't anybody know? I don't know. I don't think universities care whether what you publish is true or not, which is a remarkable thing to say, isn't it? A university doesn't care. Well, maybe it does care, but it doesn't check. I've been working at my university doing trials for about 25 years, and no one from my university has ever checked my data. I could be cheating. So, right. So, because I knew Professor Furukawa was here, this is a systematic review that he was involved in with others from the University of Oxford. So, all randomized trials, as far as I could see, were included regardless of registration status. So, I think it's difficult to exclude selection bias. I believe, and I raised this so that we could have some discussion, that, I don't think we can do this anymore. We have to find a cohort of prospectively registered trials, and then we have to seek all of those trials. And that actually just taking the published trials, or the ones we can find, I'm not sure if we can do that anymore. And the interesting thing is that I think John Ioannidis is one of the authors of this. And he had written previously about psychiatry trials that, he acknowledged publication bias is huge a problem. So publication bias is a huge problem. While only half of these trials had significant effects, published reports almost always have significant effects. So one of the authors is very skeptical about psychiatry trials, published psychiatry trials. Very strong selection bias. But I don't know why he changed his mind.
Because we have all the phase 2 and phase 3 trials based on FDA reports. And actually of the included 211
For 7%. I'm glad I raised it then, because so you included all trials regardless of registration status, but all of these trials had to be submitted to the FDA.
Not all of them, but we did include all of them, and we did include all of those published and unpublished trials reported in the FDA reports.
Oh, I see.
So we had contacted drug companies and sought their internal reports, so that we had unpublished data for 70% of the included trials.
For 70%. I hadn't realized that. Well, I'm glad I raised it then, because I hadn't realized that. And are you satisfied that those...
Well, we didn't find any indication, or slight indication, should I say, of small study effects. And I think we are quite confident that this data set is, we can never be sure.
Yeah.
Right? But we are, let's say, I don't know, 80% confident that this data set is free of publication bias.
I see.
Trials possible, because we have gone through this list, 20 times with Andrea to check if there is no duplicate publications. And in the older data sets, it is so difficult to know which trial comes from which other trial, or if the same data set may be reported by another indication.
Okay.
And we noted the very same thing you have been talking about in this data set, like the exact publication of the data set.
Yeah.
And the duplicate publication of two trials combined into one. And then actually, after publishing that trial, we submitted, we've been doing some secondary analysis, and one anonymous reviewer pointed out this trial must be the same as the other trial.
Yeah.
It was. So it should be about 210 trials.
I see. So I think we're sort of finding out very similar things at the same time, because...
I can give you examples of whatever you just described today.
Yeah. So it's almost like, they might be real trials, but their results kind of get magnified, don't they?
Yes, so just as you say, we have found the so-called wish bias, or the novel agent effects, so that we think we need 10 years before we know the true effects of, in this case, antidepressants. And we have found that out through the cumulative network meta-analysis, that the initial effect sizes are almost always exaggerated.
Yeah.
And we need 10 hours, 10 years, not 10 hours, I wish it were 10 hours, but 10 years before we know the true efficacy of any agent. And by that time,
so when you first start taking an antidepressant, you feel really good, but it wears off.
No, I'm talking about the results of...
You're talking about the results of trials. The ones that get published early are the ones who have more likely to have... It's a time lag bias thing.
Yes,
So,
kind of. But then, as I say, we had no publication bias, and so that the year that we took was more of the year of the study rather than the publication date.
I see.
But still, we have the so-called initial novel agent effect, so that the earlier trials, which are often smaller, often report bigger effect sizes.
Okay. Yeah. So you did a lot more than most Cochrane reviews do.
Yeah.
A lot more. You went to the FDA records and the drug companies. And the drug companies were forthcoming, they were helpful.
Let's say 5 out of 8. Quite cooperative.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting because so my feeling about the whole Cochrane endeavor has changed completely, and I feel it's like this is what I feel Cochrane is about at the moment. It's just like there's all of this rubbish, and it's just going through this rubbish. And it picks out, you know, it gathers all of this rubbish together and kind of makes diamonds out of it. And I just don't believe that's possible. And I think what we should do is, like, I just think we've got to throw away many more trials that I just don't think they provide useful information. And this ethic that the Cochrane collaboration has of every little trial matters is just not true. Every little trial doesn't matter. You should, small trials, you should just not bother. But and then if you get a bigger trial, you should properly check it. So there we are. That's the story of a marriage and a divorce.